The morning air was sharp with wind and the faint scent of diesel as Naomi stepped off the crowded city bus. Her worn sneakers splashed into a shallow puddle, and she instinctively tugged her thrift store coat tighter around her waist. The cafe on the corner, Pine and Pearl, stood like a pocket of warmth in the damp chill. Its old wooden sign creaked slightly with the breeze. Inside it was always busy, always loud, but familiar, home in a city that rarely offered comfort. She pushed open the door, greeted by the steam of espresso and the clink of ceramic. At 28, Naomi had long traded in dreams for routines. Mornings meant early shifts, chipped mugs, and polite smiles. Nights meant sharing a one-bedroom flat with her cousin Evelyn and carefully counting change for groceries. Behind the counter, she tied her apron with quick fingers. Her manager, Neil, nodded at her without looking up from the screen. The place bustled already. Students on laptops, office workers with Bluetooth earbuds, a few older regulars flipping through worn newspapers. Naomi moved through the morning like choreography, orders taken, drinks made, trays cleared, smiles offered. Her thoughts drifted to Evelyn's medicine, the rising rent, the overdue utility notice she hadn't opened yet. Still, she smiled. What else was there to do? The door creaked again. A man stepped in. He was older, mid to late 50s, with silvered hair under a flat cap, his coat drenched from the rain, and a canvas bag slung over one shoulder. He paused, just inside the threshold, eyes scanning the place like he wasn't sure he belonged. Naomi watched as he approached the counter. "Just a cup of black tea," he said quietly, his accent hinting at a childhood in the South. Naomi punched in the order, her fingers hovering over the screen. "That'll be $2.15, she said gently. The man reached into his coat pocket, fumbled, checked his other pocket, his brow furrowed. He pulled out a few coins, some lint, a key, and then nothing. I'm sorry," he murmured. "I thought I had my wallet." Naomi gave him a kind look. "It happens." Behind her, Neil noticed. "Naomi," he barked. "If he can't pay, he can't stay. You know the policy." The man's face flushed crimson. He backed away, murmuring, "Didn't mean to cause trouble." "I'm not asking for a handout," he added quickly. "Just a dry place until the rain lets up." A few customers glanced up. Someone chuckled under their breath. One woman muttered, "Why do they always come in here like it's a shelter?" Naomi's chest tightened. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a crumpled $5 bill. Yesterday's tip, all she had left for lunch. "I've got it," she said, placing it on the counter. Neil frowned. "That's not your job." She didn't flinch. "Maybe it's not, but it's the right thing." The man looked at her, startled. "You don't have to." "I know," she replied, "but I want to." Neil muttered under his breath and walked away. Naomi poured the tea herself, set it on the counter. "Table by the window's the warmest," she said. The man gave a soft, almost reverent nod. "Thank you. My name's Elias." "I'm Naomi." He settled by the window. Rain streaked down the glass behind him. As Naomi resumed her duties, the mood in the cafe shifted slightly. Some customers avoided her gaze. A few whispered. One young man snorted. "Hope she gets a good Yelp review for that performance." Naomi didn't respond. She didn't regret it. She watched Elias sip his tea with trembling hands. There was something about him. He didn't look like someone who begged. He looked like someone who had once stood tall, now bent by time. By the end of her shift, Elias was gone. So was the $5. But Naomi felt a strange calm, not satisfaction, not pride, something quieter. Peace. Naomi's apartment was a fourth-floor walk-up with flickering hallway lights and a mailbox that didn't quite latch shut. She entered quietly, careful not to wake Evelyn. Her cousin lay curled on the couch, a knit blanket drawn up to her chin. The remnants of her last coughing fit lingered in the air. Naomi tiptoed into the kitchenette and reheated some broth, setting it beside Evelyn with a gentle nudge to wake her. Evelyn stirred. "You're late." Naomi smiled faintly. "Rain was bad, bus was late. You know how it is." She didn't mention the $5, or Elias. Later, Naomi sat at the tiny table with her journal open, pen in hand. She scribbled one line. "It doesn't cost much to be kind, but it always costs something." The next morning, Pine and Pearl felt different. Naomi sensed it the second she stepped inside. Neil didn't say good morning. The regulars didn't nod. Even her closest co-worker, Danny, kept her distance. At 10 a.m., Neil called her into the back. "You're not a social worker, Naomi," he said, arms crossed. What you did yesterday put us in a weird spot. We don't want this place to become a drop-in center." "I paid for the tea," she said simply. "That's not the point." "No," she said, calm but firm. "It's yours, and I won't do it again if you don't want me to, but I won't apologize for it." He looked at her like he didn't know what to make of that. "Go clean the back booths." The day passed slowly. Naomi felt the distance grow between her and the people she saw every morning. Some stared, some whispered. Danny finally spoke up near the end of their shift. "Look, I get it, you're all heart, but this is a job, not a rescue mission." Naomi didn't reply. That night she walked home under the same cloud-soaked sky. But the next morning everything changed. It started with a knock. A delivery man stood at her door holding a slim envelope with her name written in perfect cursive. Naomi looked at it as if it might bite her. Inside was a card, thick, cream-colored, embossed in silver. "Naomi S. Doyle, you are cordially invited to tea this Sunday afternoon. The Glass Garden Room, Ivybrook Hotel, 3:00 p.m. Ask for Mr. E. Barrington. No formal attire required, only curiosity." Naomi blinked. The Ivybrook? That hotel cost more per night than she made in a week. She thought of throwing the invitation away, but curiosity tugged harder than caution. Naomi didn't tell Evelyn about the invitation, not because she was hiding anything. She wasn't even sure what she would say. "A man I bought tea for sent me an invite to the most luxurious hotel in the city," sounded like the opening line to a scam or a fairy tale. But Sunday came, and with it, her decision. She wore a navy blouse she'd only worn to one job interview, paired with slacks that didn't quite match, and shoes she'd borrowed from Evelyn. Her curls refused to cooperate, so she pulled them into a low bun and added a touch of lipstick she rarely used. At 2:45, she stepped through the Ivybrook's revolving glass doors and into a world that looked nothing like her own. Polished marble, gold-trimmed fixtures, towering windows, everything shimmered, like even the light came from money. She approached the concierge with hesitant steps. I'm meeting someone. Mr. E. Barrington?" The concierge didn't blink. "The Glass Garden Room, 23rd floor, private elevator to the left." The ride up felt surreal. She expected her reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls to vanish, like she didn't belong. But when the doors slid open, there was only quiet. Glass walls encircled the room, draped in hanging greenery and soft light. A single table was set for two, porcelain cups, real silver. And at the far window, standing tall in a dark tailored coat, was Elias. Or rather, Mr. Elias Barrington. He turned and smiled. "Naomi, I wasn't sure you'd come." She took a breath. "Neither was I." They sat. A server poured hot jasmine tea and disappeared. Naomi stared at the man across from her. Gone was the soaked coat, the weary eyes, yet something remained, something unmistakable. "I owe you an explanation," Elias said. "You don't owe me anything," she replied, though her voice betrayed curiosity. He nodded slowly. "Then maybe a story." Naomi listened as Elias spoke, not with flourish but with honesty. He had once been a civil engineer, owned a firm that built bridges, literal ones, across rivers and coastlines, lost his wife 15 years ago, no children. After selling his company, he began traveling, not to escape, but to watch. "I needed to see who people really were when no one was watching," he said. "So I stopped wearing suits. I started wearing silence. I went to cities and small towns, dressed like someone invisible. I waited to see if anyone would still notice." Naomi said nothing for a long moment. "You were looking for kindness," she finally said. "I was looking for truth." He sipped his tea, and that day in a rainy cafe I found it. Naomi didn't quite know what to feel. Grateful, flattered, manipulated. "You pretended to be someone else." "I didn't pretend," Elias said softly. "I just didn't show you everything." "And now?" she asked. "What is this, an apology, a test?" "No," he said, "it's an invitation." Naomi looked at him. "An invitation to what?" "To talk, to see if maybe we could share more than just tea. No expectations, no promises, just the possibility of something more." The weeks that followed were quiet but unexpected. Elias didn't try to dazzle Naomi. There were no limousines or rooftop dinners, no shopping sprees or champagne. Instead, there were walks through city parks and lazy afternoons at bookstores. They'd sit by the river with paper cups of tea, sometimes talking, sometimes not. He never asked about her struggles, but Naomi shared anyway, about Evelyn, the bills, the exhaustion, the invisible weight she carried every day, trying not to sink. Elias listened, not as someone who pitied her, but as someone who genuinely cared. And Naomi asked questions too, about his bridges, his wife, the way he spoke of her, as if she still occupied every room in his mind. Naomi never asked if he was looking for love again. It didn't feel like the point. One evening, over soup in a quiet diner, Elias asked, "Do you believe everyone gets one defining moment?" Naomi stirred her spoon slowly. "I think we get a lot of moments, but we only remember the ones where we choose to be more than what the world expects of us." He looked at her thoughtfully. "You did that day in the cafe." She shrugged. "I didn't think, I just remembered." "Remembered what?" Naomi leaned back. "I was 12. My mother collapsed at a bus stop. People stepped around her like she was a pile of garbage, except one woman. She sat beside us, held my hand, gave me her scarf. I never saw her again, but I made a promise. If I ever saw someone being treated like they were invisible, I'd do something." Elias didn't respond right away, just nodded as if the wind inside him had shifted. 1 month later, Naomi received another envelope. This one was simpler, handwritten. "Naomi, I'll be spending the next few weeks in a small village in Maine. I go every spring. The sea air is good for reflection. I'd like for you to come. No expectations, just the chance to breathe." Naomi stared at the note for a long time. She wasn't looking for a fairy tale. But maybe she was ready for a chapter that was hers. She packed a small bag, told Evelyn the truth. "I think I need to see what happens when someone opens a door, and I don't run away." Evelyn didn't tease her. She just smiled and said, "About time." The village sat where the land met the sea, cedar shingles weathered by salt wind, gulls circling above a rocky harbor, and a lighthouse that blinked its slow rhythm across dusk skies. Naomi arrived by train, unsure if she was stepping into someone else's life or simply another version of her own. Elias met her at the station, not in a luxury car, but an old station wagon with a cracked windshield and an empty thermos rolling in the back seat. They stayed in a modest inn near the shoreline. The air smelled like pine and brine, and every morning, Naomi would step outside just to feel the cold sting of the Atlantic wind. It reminded her she was still real. Their days took no shape. They wandered into town markets and borrowed books from a lending library housed in a repurposed church. They helped an elderly man paint his porch and joined a bonfire with local fishermen who treated them like old friends. Naomi had never known peace like this, not passive or idle, but a kind of belonging that required nothing but presence. One night, under a blanket of stars, they sat on the back steps of the inn. "Can I ask you something?" Naomi said, nursing a mug of warm cider. "Anything," Elias replied. "Why me?" He turned to her, eyes gentle. "Because you reminded me that people still exist who act without motive, who don't ask what's in it for them." Naomi looked away. "But I'm not anyone special. I'm broke. I'm tired. I still count coins before I buy groceries." "That's exactly why it mattered," he said softly, "because you gave from what little you had. That kind of kindness doesn't just echo, it builds foundations." Naomi's eyes glistened. "You speak like someone who's already decided something." "I have," he said. He reached into his coat pocket and handed her another envelope, this one thicker. She opened it carefully. Inside were legal documents, papers establishing the Naomi Doyle Initiative. A fund, not in her name alone, but in her spirit. "It's not a charity," Elias said. "It's a seed. You can water it, or not. I trust your instincts." Naomi stared at the papers, then at him. "I don't want your money," she whispered. "I want to be something I build, not something handed." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm offering you something far rarer." She looked confused. "Trust," he said. By the end of their stay, the village felt like a second home. Naomi left with a notebook full of ideas, cheeks windburned from ocean air, and a heart steadier than it had been in years. Back home, she didn't tell many people, but she started to change in small ways. She spoke more clearly, stood more upright. She began sketching ideas for a community cafe, one where no one had to earn dignity. And for the first time in a long while, Naomi dreamed of more than just surviving. It took 9 months. 9 months of late-night emails, sketches on napkins, and one zoning board meeting where Naomi nearly lost her nerve. But on a rainy Tuesday, fittingly, the Wren Cafe opened its doors. The name came from Naomi's mother, who used to say, "Even small birds sing the loudest when they know someone is listening." It wasn't flashy, no influencers, no chandeliers, but it was warm. Inside, light streamed through wide windows. The smell of baked bread and cinnamon filled the space. Tables bore names, not numbers. Grace, quiet, begin, still. On the chalkboard menu near the entrance were 3 lines. First cup's on us. Second, if you can, is on someone else. Everyone is welcome, no questions, no shame. That morning, Naomi arrived early. She made the tea herself, wiped each table twice, and stood near the window, watching the rain fall against the sidewalk. Then the door opened. A man stepped in, soaked, hunched, hesitant. His coat was thin, and his hands trembled slightly as he looked around. Naomi started to step forward, but one of her baristas, a quiet young man named Reed, got there first. "Sir," he said gently, "table by the heater's the coziest. I'll bring you something warm." The man nodded slowly, clearly not used to being treated gently. Naomi smiled. The lesson had been passed. She moved behind the counter, poured 2 cups. Then paused, because through the window, across the street under a black umbrella, stood Elias. He didn't wave, didn't beckon. He just watched, with the same eyes she'd seen on that rainy morning so long ago, eyes that searched for humanity, and this time found it staring right back. Naomi lifted her chin. He nodded once. Then he turned and walked away into the rain. No fanfare, no goodbye. But something passed between them in that glance, not an ending, but a beginning left in capable hands. That evening, during the cafe's soft opening, Naomi stood near the piano, a ceramic mug in hand. The room was full, delivery drivers, nurses on break, students huddled over books, an older woman reading aloud to a child. Naomi cleared her throat. "Some of you know me, some of you don't, but years ago I bought a man a cup of tea, that's all, $5 in a moment of kindness." She paused. What I didn't know was that it would change my life. A silence settled. I didn't help him because I wanted anything. I helped him because he reminded me of someone I loved, and because when the world makes you invisible, one kind gesture can make you feel real again. People nodded. Today this place opens not because someone wealthy wrote a check. It exists because someone believed in me, and let me believe in myself. She glanced at the chalkboard. No one should have to earn kindness, not here, not anywhere. She smiled. And if a cup of tea can change a life, imagine what we can do together, 1 cup at a time. The room filled with applause. A saxophone player started to play softly near the back. And as Naomi turned to help a woman with 2 kids find a seat, she knew something deeply and irrevocably true. She didn't need a miracle. She just needed that one moment when she chose to see someone others ignored. And because of that choice, 2 lives had been rewritten. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of the power of quiet compassion, or inspired you to lead with empathy, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Stories Untold. Here we share the kind of stories that echo across lives, across time, reminding us what it truly means to be seen. We'll see you in the next one.